Okay, on this week's podcast, we are welcoming Gollick from Sidewinder. Welcome back to the show, mate.
Hey, bud, you all right? Thanks for having us.
No worries, good to see you. So, we kind of covered this last time you boys were all on the show, but it was a complete load of chaos with all of you shouting over each other. And I don't think you were paying attention because you were watching the rugby or something.
Yeah, I was just letting the backing band do their thing, have their 5 minutes of fame.
Let them have their 5 minutes of fame. Do you want to give a little bit about your background, kind of previous bands, and kind of how you got into kind of being in a thrash crossover band, I guess?
So first band I was in was a band called Blood, Sweat and Beer that was formed in mid to early 2000s, around sort of 2008, 2009 time, with Paul Jones, guitarist in Sidewinder. Me and him started that with a few other people around Wakefield. Did that for a year or so, released 2 album EP type things, and then that band broke up. Then went on to form a death metal band called Masochist. Again, released 2 4-track EPs. At which point then I left to join the forces, and then about sort of 6 or 7 years down the line, started missing music and got in touch with Paul, and we got Sidewinder going again. And I guess what got me into metal in the first place is being a sort of young teenager growing up, sort of getting into different things and different sort of tastes and trends and what have you, and just like the sound of guitars on sort of, obviously started off listening to stuff like Nickelback when I was a young man, and just the sort of sound of guitars really sort of excited me really, and really I was really interested in that, and I was wanted something heavier. And then you eventually sort of naturally just progress and end up at thrash metal, death metal, grindcore, and that's kind of where I stuck really.
Cool. So you guys, you reformed a few years ago, put out a couple of tracks early on, but finally, and it does feel like it's been a long wait, and we'll blame COVID, but nothing to do with bad organisation and other things going on. But you finally got the first album coming out kind of middle of the month.
Yeah. So War Tapes Volume 1 is due to be released on 17th of March. It has been a long time coming. We've been grinding away at this for years really. Yeah, COVID slowed us down, and then of course my employment sees me deployed quite a lot, so for large periods of the year I'm unavailable, so that slows things down as well. And of course the rest of the lads, they're all, full-time dads, working full-time, working shifts, so sometimes unfortunately life gets in the way a little bit, but we're there now, we've persevered, and we're at this point now where we can finally release something that we're quite excited about.
Definitely. So on that note, you've released the first single off that album, which is called Last Orders. For those who are paying attention, it was also the kind of the tease track that came out nearly a year ago, because it was on Mosh in the Roof on Volume 3. It's got a bit of a background. There's a bit of a story to tell. It's not your typical aliens and kind of space monsters thrash fare. It's got a bit more to it. Do you want to give a bit of a backstory of how that album, that track came about? Sorry.
So when it comes to my lyric writing, I always prefer to, rather than sort of write about like sort of made up fantasy sort of fairy tales and robots and stuff, I like to sort of think about my experiences. That to me it's easier for me to write, and I can put more emotion into it. Last Orders, it's basically the lyrics are telling the story of David Attenborough on a night out in Wakefield. So obviously David Attenborough is used to being around feral beasts, and there's quite a lot of feral types around Wakefield, so it seems quite fitting really. Wakefield used to have a venue called the Snooty Fox, which was, you could almost call it like a bit of a mecca really for like local like thrash, death metal, just heavy metal music really. And that's where the majority of the band members met each other back in like the early to mid 2000s, when we're all sort of
drinking underage.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the whole drinking underage, and smoking the older devil's lettuce. Sort of mid to late teens, all sort of congregated there, met each other, got into like thrash music and heavy music and started forming bands and stuff. And that's I'd say Last Orders is kind of telling the story of a little bit of how.
I've lost your audio.
Yeah. Yeah. So who the hell is this now? Hold on a minute. What the? I think I'm about to get a target. Yeah.
Okay, so the first single came out for the new album a couple of weeks ago. It's called Last Orders. Those who are eagle-eyed may have spotted that on Mosh and Roof on Volume 3 last year. It's got a bit of a backstory to it. Obviously, it's not your typical Dungeons and Dragons and kind of apocalyptic wasteland story, although it kind of is, but not for the same reasons. Do you want to kind of give a bit of a background into where that song came about?
Yeah, so when it comes to my lyric writing, I always prefer to write about like my experiences and stuff that I've lived through, rather than sort of fantasy, sort of fairy tale, sort of futuristic stuff. Because I feel like if it's something that I've lived and got experience in, I feel I can put a bit more sort of emotion behind it and sort of a bit more feeling, make it more personal. But yeah, Lost Orders. It's basically, the song is supposed to be David Attenborough narrating a night out in Wakefield, as he's used to sort of filming wild beasts, and there's quite a lot of feral beasts around Wakefield. It seemed quite fitting, really. And there used to be a venue in Wakefield. It's long closed down now, called the Snooty Fox, which for years and years has been almost like a bit of a mecca, really, for sort of metalheads, people into metal and rock music all across the country, really. Like, quite a lot of people and a lot of bands have known about this place and come and played there and gone on to do bigger and better things. And also, the majority of the band are from Wakefield, myself included. And we all met at this venue in our sort of mid to late teens, getting into sort of thrash music, death metal, just your metal and your rock and stuff, and all sort of naturally congregated here, met each other, all into the same sort of thing, wanted to do the same kind of things, watching thrash bands, and we all strap on guitars and buy drums, head to the local practice room, and started forming bands and stuff, and like created a little bit of a scene for ourselves, really.
And you talked about that. It was the kind of home to Full Thrash Assault, and lots and lots of bands who came through the UK, or people like Pitiful Rain and kind of Evil, and kind of it's a who's who of kind of stomping ground originally.
100%, yeah. There's been lots and lots of bands who have cut the teeth at the Snooty Fox, and which is why there's quite a, like I said, mentioned a bit of a subtle, interesting twist in the lyrics to Last Orders, because this venue was home to so many bands, like you say. Bands like Pitiful Rain have played there, Malevolence, who are now like superstars, they've played. I've seen them play at Snooty Fox to like 4 people. Flesh God Apocalypse, the first time they toured the UK, I remember seeing them in the Snooty Fox. It was a Friday night. There were like 4 people there. And there's just been loads and loads of great bands who have come through and sort of started, they've cut the teeth at this venue, the Snooty Fox, and gone on to do great things. And it really was just a massive epicenter of activity, just a hive of activity going on. And you got to question, like, how does a venue like that, that's providing so much for the scene, lots of bands are coming through there, lots of promoters are heading there to, like you see people and sort of sign people and work with people and get CDs and everything's going on. How does something so influential and so important like that just suddenly cease to be? And obviously that's part of like what we're hopefully going to be chatting about today, kind of sort of look under the stones of what is it that we can do, like lessons identified from venues like that in the past that have been brilliant and now closed down. How do we stop that from happening? Because obviously the metal scene, metal fans, we're a bit of a dying breed. It's not really a growth industry. It's gigs and festivals and such are few and far between. So, what can we all do for each other to help each other out to keep things like, metal venues, rock bars, and of course the bands as well. How do we keep it all going so that for future generations there will be, because bands like Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica, no one's immortal. At some point they will die, and there'll be no more thrash gods like that who are going to be creating albums. So that's when you need the smaller bands to come through, make it big, and then fill that void. So, and obviously everyone's got to start somewhere, and if all the local venues are going to close down, we've got no hope really, have we?
So let's uncover that stone a little bit. Obviously, the Snooty Fox, some of the reason it closed down is kind of shrouded in, let's say, dubious behaviour. So the owner was a little bit, had a few suspect activities going on. But without going into that, where did everyone else go? Okay, a venue's gone, and a venue's really important. It's obviously a facilitator and a champion, and people who let you get away with shit that kind of posher venues might not let you get away with. But where did everyone disperse to? What happened? Where did it all go, or did it just die on its arse?
Bit of both, really. I mean, the venue owner, he was kind of stuck in his ways. Didn't really want to diversify or keep up with modern times. He didn't do a lot to help his business sort of grow when times got hard, really. He kind of relied on his regulars going in there, which obviously I was one of the regulars. And I remember definitely once or twice, if me and my friends, we decided not to go to the Snooty one night, I wanted to go to a different bar to drink somewhere else in town just for a bit of a change. He'd sometimes almost tell us off and have a bit of a go at us, really, like, oh, why have you not come to my pub? It's like, well, dude, we can go where we want. We don't always need to come and drink in your pub. We can go where we like. So obviously that attitude doesn't really help. And then, of course, people growing up, getting older, wives, kids, jobs, something's got to sort of give and sort of stop at some point, hasn't it, really?
Yeah.
And then, you will always have the younger generations coming through to sort of fill the void, and you will have, older people who, have kind of got through the sort of early sort of stages of growing up when you're sort of in your early 30s and life's just manic, and you get to sort of like your 40s, 50s, and things kind of slow down a little bit, so you've got more time to go out and enjoy yourself. So there will always be that, but yeah, ultimately I think what was the biggest collapse of the Wakefield sort of music scene really is just I think a bit of an unwillingness to progress. It was kind of stuck in its ways, and of course Wakefield's a small town. It's surrounded by bigger towns like Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester. There's more people, there's more of a pull, you get bigger touring artists coming through. So that's obviously not going to help. But it's kind of really upsetting to see such a great all day like Full Flash Assault, like I mentioned earlier, to see that stop, because that just was, when I was going there, I was a young man, sort of 16, 17, 18-year-old, and when you're that young and you're in school, you're the one kid in high school who's got the long hair, into metal, wearing band t-shirts, a bit of an outcast really. And then suddenly to be able to go to this venue and be surrounded by and meet people who are the same as you, the same thing as you, suddenly you feel like you're not alone, and you've got a bit of a community there, and that's what the Snooty Fox was.
Without having to stump up hundreds of pounds to go to a Bloodstock or a Donington, or which is it's a different category of commitment. And say when 15, 16, you're not always going to have all that 300 quid to throw away on a festival for a weekend.
Oh yeah, 100%, yeah.
So you kind of said about everyone drifts away and stuff. Obviously we're a thrash show, so thrash itself has kind of ebbed and flowed, all the time. 86 to 89, 90, it was crest of a wave, and UK bands as well as international bands were getting snapped up like nobody's business, and it kind of disappeared again to the out to kind of late 90s, 2000s, and then it comes back again. And is that just a natural way of doing things? Is that down to this lack of wanting to progress and do things differently? How many times can people recreate the same Slayer riffs and the same?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thrash definitely, from what I can see, does definitely, like I say, go in waves and peaks and troughs. I think a lot of that is, like you've mentioned, is like a bit of a, thrash isn't very progressive. You could listen to a thrash song from the 80s and then pick a brand new thrash song now, and the bands are probably singing about the same kind of stuff, like, nuclear war and all the rest of it. It's not really progressing too much, whereas when you look at other subgenres like hardcore and death metal, quite progressive. Hardcore's changed a lot over the years. It's kind of keeping with the times. whereas thrash seems to be kind of stuck in its ways a little bit. I mean, I'm a big thrash fan. I like a lot of thrash, but I do sometimes find myself getting a little bit bored because it's like I said, everyone's kind of doing the same sort of thing. Is where I think, like, again, back to hardcore, why the hardcore scene's so successful, I think, is obviously changing and evolving with the times helps, but also the sort of mentality around the hardcore scene. Like, you know, you go to a hardcore show, it doesn't matter who you know there, if you're on your own or if you're in a band or whatever. They've got a bit of a really good sort of community going on. Everyone seems to know each other, get some of each other, has a drink, and it doesn't really matter what you know or who you know. They're just there to enjoy it and enjoy themselves. Whereas definitely with the younger generation in the thrash scene, now this is something that I've experienced myself quite a lot. Like, look at me right now, short styled hair. I don't dress like particularly metal. I don't often wear metal t-shirts. I'm normally quite well presented. You know, I turn up to gigs when I'm playing, and you know, the sort of really sort of die-hard, like younger metal heads there, you know, leather jackets, cut off denim, like battle jackets, the long hair and everything. And they see me and they always look down the nose at me thinking like, oh, who's this bloke? What's he about? You know, I might try and go to the bar and get a drink if they're in my way. So, excuse me, lads, I get past you, and they'll either ignore me or sometimes like grunt at me. I think, all right, sunshine, fair enough. But then when I get on stage and do my thing, after the set's finished, those people have been a bit ignorant to me because, you know, I don't look the part. They're always the ones down the front of the stage after the set shaking me and going, man, that was brilliant, you're absolutely awesome. And I think it's kind of a bit of that mentality, the sort of prejudice and the being too judgmental and getting hung up on like labels and stuff. I think that is definitely something that's a bit of a hindrance in the thrash scene. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what you look like or what you're into. You know, if you're producing good music that people want to listen to, then just go for it.
And off the back of that, I guess, you know, in a way, kind of thrash has often been a gateway. You know, it's where lots of people start, but they then diversify from then. And you see it with a lot of the bands now. They start off as a thrash band, but they're, you know, like they did the first time round in the late 80s, they start drifting towards a more death metal-y sound, or they go, you know, and hence I guess the resurgence of a lot of crossover bands at the moment. You know, we've always had crossover, you know, your DRIs and your you know, your suicidal tendencies and things like that, but you then go your kind of next generation of your municipal waste and people like that. And then, you know, once again, now yourselves, Overpower, you know, Aggrieve, people like that. And of course, the big boys like Malevolence and Cage Fight. There's that crossover thing kind of bridges that gap and brings people both ways.
Yeah, definitely would agree. I mean, one thing that I've been trying to sort of vocalise this and kind of struggling a little bit. So this might sound a bit like waffle, so if you bear with me. Just the thing of sort of like labeling yourself. Like, if you want to be a thrash band, then yeah, fair enough. You're going to be a death metal band, yeah, fair enough. You know, do what you want to do. But I always find if you just signpost yourself and like pigeonhole yourself with just one thing, like, oh, we are just a thrash band, we are just a death metal band, you're closing a lot of doors for yourself there. And yeah, from like a promoter's point of view, if you're looking for a thrash band in Newcastle, for example, and you put on your Facebook page, yeah, we're a thrash band, then they search that, it's going to show up. So in that respect, labeling is quite good. But when you look at bands like Malevolence, when they came about, they never said we're a hardcore band, we're a thrash band, we're a metalcore band, like nothing. They were just like, we are what we are. Yeah, you like it, you like it or you leave it, kind of thing. And I think that's where people are getting a little bit too hung up, especially when you could have like, say, a band from, again, we'll say Newcastle. Band could have been formed in, let's say, 2018, and they call themselves an 80s San Francisco thrash band. And it's like, well, you were formed in 2018, so you're not 80s, and you're from Newcastle, so you're not San Francisco either. So, you know, I think doing that sort of labeling, it can be a bit of a hindrance to some degree. Because, like I say, you're definitely going to close doors on yourself, which could be open. Like, and again, for the thing of music progressing, like hardcore is obviously thrash crossover. Sorry, is thrash and hardcore crossover. You know, that sort of thing of joining the two genres and taking influence from both sides to create a new sound, which, you know, keeps the whole sort of train moving along, really. And I'm a big fan of dance music. I don't mind admitting that. Like, I love Salvatore Ganacci and Oliver Tree. Vice Tones, like big fan. And I do a bit of riff writing in Sidewinder, and I always like try to have a bit of that influence in there as well. You know, like sort of a good driving beat, but with like a memorable kind of melody that you can sing along to as well. And I think if people can stop being so stubborn and be willing to sort of, you know, you don't have to become a full-on like dance or EDM fan, or if you're a metal fan, you don't have to stop liking metal and get straight into hardcore. You know, just dip your toe in the water a little bit, have a play around, find something you might like it, you might not, but at the end of the day, you're going to take something away from it which you can then apply to your sound and your music. And that, I think, is something that's, it's obviously something that Snooty Fox was definitely lacking, but I think just the thrash scene and metal scene in general, if things are going to keep going, we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and get the same results. You know, you just need to diversify a little bit and just do something a bit new, a bit interesting, a bit wild, just something new and exciting, really.
I think fans are to blame in that as well, though. You know, we'll go back even to our favourite bands, and we'll, you know, everyone will criticise that the new album, you know, they've sold out. It doesn't sound like, you know, it's not a thrash band anymore. It doesn't sound like a thrash album. But if they, you know, if they regurgitate the same stuff and it sounds exactly like the last album, all you get is, fuck's sake, you've not progressed, you've not done anything different. I might as well have, you know, what? So you know, as fans of heavy music, we need to be a bit more open to new approaches and new sounds as well, I guess.
100%, definitely. I mean, I look at Metallica's Death Magnetic when that came out. I think a lot of it is kind of right place, right time. But when that album came out, like, best part of 10 years ago, I would definitely one who thought, like, what is this? This is crap. But then, like, you listen to it again a few years down the line, and like the song All Nightmare Long, you actually think it's not actually that bad of a track. Like, yeah, at the time, you know, it doesn't hold a candle to, you know, Master of Puppets or For Whom the Bell Tolls, you know, definitely not. But take it as face value, you know, it's not actually that bad of a track, and yeah, just a little bit of sort of right place, right time, I think. And of course, having that open mind as a fan of any sort of genre of music definitely helps. Yeah, you might not like it because it's not the same as what they've just done, but you know, every band, no matter what level you're at, to keep going, you can't just keep churning out. Like you said, you can't just keep on churning out the same thing. You've got to sort of modernise and try something new.
So back onto you guys in a way. Sidewinder are kind of quite self-sufficient. You know, you do a lot of the stuff yourself. You've got kind of in-house either yourselves or significant others, photographers, artists, designers. You know, everything is in. You know, you've got the ability. If you can't do it, you know someone who can. How, you know, which obviously makes you quite self-sufficient and allows you to move at your own pace without all the, you know, buying in services. How do you kind of give that over to the next generation? How do you kind of help the younger guys? You know, you, as you say, you guys are all kind of ancient with kids now, so you've kind of you've been around the block. But you know, how do you kind of pass on that baton to the youth? You know, to these 18, 19-year-olds that have, you know, just passed their driving test and have, you know, spending all their monies on guitars and sitting in their room learning how to write riffs off YouTube. And you know, how do you kind of pass what the history and kind of the hard knocks you've taken down so it kind of it improves the next wave?
Yeah, definitely. We are quite fortunate in Sidewinder, the position we're in and the resources that we've got available to us. Yeah, not every band's got that, and especially, like I said, the younger kids, definitely the younger bands, sorry, definitely not, no. But the thing is, like, when we were younger in our first bands, like Blood, Sweat and Beer, yeah, technology wasn't what it is now. You know, we didn't have the money or the resources or the know-how to do things, but this is part of what the song Last Order is about, really. Like, in the metal scene in Wakefield, it really was a community. There was somebody doing like everything that you needed, really. Like, if you needed photos doing, there'd have been a couple of people at college doing like a course in, you know, videography and photography, so you could get in touch with them. They'd take some photos of you, you know, so you get free photos, they get free photos for their portfolio, stuff like that. You know, if you've got a friend at university doing music engineering, again, if he needs a band to practice recording, you know, great for the band because they get free recording, great for your mate who's doing music technology, and he gets, you know, practice recording, mixing, mastering. So it's just all about being a community and, you know, like tapping into those resources and just helping each other out. Like,
So it's that community, not competition side of things again.
Yeah, 100%. That's something we sort of shout and rave about quite a lot in Sidewinder, about the music scene being a community and not a competition. And so the music industry and the music scene, you've got the bands, and everyone sort of looks at the bands as like they are the scene, but that's not right at all, because if you didn't have the venues, you wouldn't have bands. If you didn't have practice studios or rehearsal studios, you wouldn't have bands. If you didn't have sound guys, venue owners, people who can do recording, do photos, videos, people like yourself do podcasts and promoting albums and gigs and stuff, like we're all a part of it. Yes, some parts contribute more than others, but at the end of the day, it's a fine balance. You can't have the whole scene without all of those different factors, really. And if there were no venues, there'd be no bands. If there were none to promote venues or gigs or bands, there'd just be none of it, really. So again, sort of, it comes down to the community, not competition thing. Like, people just sort of dropping the ego, dropping the attitude, like respecting everyone for who they are and what they do, and just everyone sort of doing what they can to keep it all together, keep it all going, really. I mean, with stuff like social media, I really don't. It's good, and it's bad, in equal and opposite ways. Like, it's great that you can, at your fingertips, go on Instagram, go on Facebook and YouTube and such, and find bands like really easily. That's great. But when it becomes a bit of a war of, people being like, oh, we've got 10,000 more followers than you on wherever, and that's when you get that competition thing, which I think people need to drop, really, because it's not what it's about, really, at all. Like, some bands are better than others, some guitarists are better than others. That's always going to be a thing. But just because you don't like what one band's doing doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't. And again, it's just that thing of just sort of dropping the ego, stop looking down your nose at each other, because we all need each other as much as the next person, really. So just being a bit of collective and pulling as resources, that's definitely going to help prevent great venues and great scenes collapsing again. And of course, it's just going to leave the door open for newer, younger bands to come in and tap into that resource and, sort of be the next wave, the next generation, really.
And I guess really, if you do make it, don't forget the bands that didn't, give your mates a leg up, give them a shout out, give them a, support slot if you can, give them all those other things.
Yeah, definitely. Again, something we're quite sort of passionate about in Sidewinder is always a thing of like reaching back. If you make it, if you get to where you want to be, then yeah, definitely reach back, help somebody else up. I mean, we've all been there, we've all been in the struggle, we've all been in the grind. There's been great bands come and go through the years, like try and rattle off a few. Nebuchadnezzar from London, they were brilliant back in the day. Dr. Death, Hospital of Death, Let 'Em Burn. These brilliant bands from back in the day that, some got a bit further than others, but again, only a select few made it through. Like, Evil, Pitiful Rain just kind of broke through and then sort of fell apart. But again, to prevent that and to keep the whole thing going, yeah, like I said, reach back, help people up. When you've done the hard yards and you've cracked it, yeah, don't give it all away and let people have an easy ride. You've got to put the graft in and the hard work yourself, but just a bit of a helping hand. If you've got the contact.
Well, even if it's not a helping hand, just don't put a boot on someone else's head to keep them under.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Just being able to help people out and impart wisdom and just tell people what to do. It's just keep it all floating, really.
Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's fine. That's the simplest way of putting it. Yeah.
Right. So we got two last things to talk about. Album. Do you want to give a little a pitch on release dates? You better give Paula a shout out, otherwise she'll come and beat us both.
Yeah. So War Tapes Volume 1 is going to be released on Devil's Paws Records on the 17th of March 23. And then the day after, the 18th of March, we have got a release show. So March is quite an exciting month for us. Like I said, we've been grinding away on this album for feels like almost 10 years, which it's not been that long, but it's been a long slug, and I'm excited to finally get it out there. Like I said, the single Lost Orders, that's on YouTube right now and on Spotify. really, really excited about that. So I'm just buzzing for people to be able to hear what we've been toiling away at for so long, and I hope people are going to enjoy it as much as what we do.
Brilliant. So you just mentioned my second bit, which was the launch show. Is the flyer out yet, or has it just been kind of mentioned in dispatches? I'm not sure if anyone's.
Yeah, there's been a bit of traffic on our band WhatsApp group this morning. There's been a few sort of flyers knocked up, but nothing's been released yet. But it'll be out shortly.
Okay. Any teasers? I know, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I'm not allowed to say.
I'm quite a big fan of suspense, so I'm going to keep people guessing. Really, the day is 17th of March. Devil's Claws record. It's going to be all over Spotify, YouTube, all the major streaming platforms. So keep watching out, really.
And we'll see you on the 18th.
Roger, yes, you will.
Nice one. Gollick, thanks for joining us. Hope the launch and the release goes as well as can be hoped for. The party's going to go off, I'm sure. I'll see you in a location to be confirmed sometime on the 18th of March.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's definitely going to be in West Yorkshire somewhere. Give that one away.
Lydia, your PSEC's terrible, mate. You're going to have the int core are going to come down on you, breaking ranks.
Yep.
Nice one. Gollick, thanks for joining us. Catch up soon, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.